right. So we're diving into Victorian literature today.
Right.
And, I'm already feeling a little overwhelmed just looking at the stack of books and articles
Yeah.
you sent my way. Like, seriously, do these people ever take a break from writing?
Right. It's pretty intense.
It's like one giant, never-ending novel.
It kind of is, though, if you think about it. Like, all these writers, they were all working
Yeah.
at the same time and kind of building on each other's ideas.
And they're all dealing with this
Yeah.
massive social change happening all around them.
Exactly. That's actually one of the first things that stood out to me when I was looking through this stuff.
Oh, yeah. What was that?
Well, it seems like every single article and book kept coming back to this idea of like social progress.
Yeah.
The Victorians, they were really obsessed with this idea of making society better.
Okay.
And they really believed that literature could be like a tool for that.
So it wasn't just about telling a good story.
Right. It was about more than just entertainment.
Yeah.
It was about using fiction to like explore these huge social issues.
So, like, would you say they were
Yeah.
kind of using their novels as a platform to...
Absolutely. They were trying to raise awareness about poverty, social injustice, all these things that were going on.
So it was like a form of social commentary almost.
Totally. And that's, I think, part of the reason why these novels are so long.
Yeah. So I was going to say, like, how could they possibly fit all that
Yeah.
social commentary into like a normal-sized book?
Exactly. It's not just about telling a story. It's about like analyzing and dissecting
Right.
every single aspect of it. And, these Victorians, they loved details.
Yeah, they were all about those details, which actually reminds me that you highlighted this one point
Uh-huh.
about it almost being like a literary competition back then.
Oh, yeah.
Like, who could write the longest, most intricate novel? Was it really just about that, though? Or
Yeah.
was there something deeper going on?
Well, I think it's definitely more complicated than just that. I
Yeah.
mean, there was probably some ego involved, right? But also, you have to remember the context. I
Yeah.
mean, this was a time of just massive change. Like
Right?
the Industrial Revolution, cities were exploding, all these new scientific discoveries.
Yeah.
And the Victorians were obsessed with documenting and analyzing everything, right?
Okay, I'm with you.
And that extended to their literature, I think. They wanted to capture like every single nuance of human experience.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, that took a lot of pages.
It's fascinating, though, how that desire to really get into the nitty-gritty of it all
Yeah.
kind of shaped their whole literary style.
Totally. I mean, it wasn't just about showing off their
Uh-huh.
vocabulary and their intricate plots. It was also about really immersing the reader in the world they were creating, like fostering empathy and understanding.
It actually makes me think of something else you pointed out about the popularity of those 3-volume novels.
Oh, the triple deckers?
Yeah, the triple check. Like,
Scared.
why were they so popular?
Well, it wasn't just because people loved carrying around these giant books. It actually had a lot to do with how books were circulated back then.
Really?
Yeah. So lending libraries were huge in the Victorian era,
Right.
and most people couldn't afford to buy books outright.
Gotcha.
So they had subscribed to these libraries, and they could only borrow one volume at a time.
Oh, I see.
So publishers, they kind of figured out that if they made the novels longer,
Right.
people would keep coming back for more,
It's like the original cliffhanger ending.
Exactly. And it kept the money rolling in for them, too.
Well, that's clever. I'll give them that.
Yeah.
So all this talk about details and social commentary, it makes me think of some of the specific authors we've been looking at,
Yeah.
like Dickens, Eliot, Thackeray. You've marked some really interesting passages in their work.
Yeah, definitely.
So where should we start? Let's talk Dickens first.
Okay, Dickens, yeah.
He's someone everyone kind of knows, even if they haven't actually read his stuff.
Right. He's sort of become larger than life.
Exactly. So what were some of the things that stood out to you when you were going through his work?
Well, Bleak House, which you've actually highlighted here in your notes, is such a great example.
Yeah, it's a beast of a book.
It is, but it's also so brilliant in how it tackles this really complex issue, which is the legal system.
Yeah.
And it's not just about the law itself. It's about how the law impacts people's lives.
Oh, interesting.
And how it can be used to manipulate and exploit people,
Yeah.
And it's a sprawling novel, like tons of characters.
I remember.
But that's kind of the point. Dickens wanted to show how this one institution, the legal system, touches so many different lives in so many different ways.
It's like he's creating this whole panorama of Victorian
Yeah.
society, right?
Exactly.
And wasn't Dickens also really involved in social reform himself?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, he wasn't just writing about these issues. He was actually living them.
Right.
He worked with charities, campaigned for better working conditions.
Wow.
He even started his own journal to promote social reform.
That's amazing. So he was really using his platform to make a difference, not just to entertain people,
Yeah, exactly.
which I think is what makes these novels so powerful. They're not just historical artifacts. You know, they're still relevant today because they're dealing with these universal human experiences.
Totally. And that kind of leads us into George Eliot, right? Because
Yeah.
you've marked some really interesting passages in Middlemarch,
Right.
which is another massive Victorian novel.
Well, for sure. But what really got me about Middlemarch was how much it focuses on like the inner lives of the characters.
Oh, absolutely. And particularly the women.
Right. Like all the restrictions they faced, all the societal expectations, and how they were trying to find their own fulfillment within that. You know?
Exactly. It's all about moral dilemmas and personal choices and the search for meaning in this really rigid social structure.
And I think Eliot does such a brilliant job of showing how all those personal struggles play out against that like larger backdrop of societal pressures.
She really captures that tension.
It's really fascinating.
Yeah.
You know, it's funny. When I was in school, I used to kind of dread reading Dickens and Eliot, you know?
Yeah, I think we all did.
I felt like homework, you know?
Yeah.
But now, seeing how their novels tackle these issues that are still so relevant today,
Right.
it's like, wow, this is the power of great storytelling, right?
Absolutely. These stories, they transcend their time.
Totally.
And it makes you wonder, you know, if these authors were writing today, what would they be focused on? What social issues would be filling their pages?
It's such a good question.
Yeah.
Like, would Dickens be tweeting about income inequality? Would Eliot have a blog about the pressures of social media?
Right.
It really makes you think.
I know. And maybe it even inspires you to go back and read some of these classics. You might be surprised at how much they still have to say to us today.
I think you're right about that. All right, well, that was a fascinating deep dive into Victorian literature. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
And we'll see you next time.
See you later.